Good afternoon, y'all. I'm a little bit early on this one. I have a doctor's appointment to take my daughter to tomorrow, so I'm not sure what my time frame will be. So I wanted to go ahead and do this today. So couple questions that we had for our Jesus on every page. First of all, referring to the book of Acts, do you think the troublemakers following the apostles around used lies to discredit them or just argued from a different point of view? Um, the sense that I would get more than anything, for these folks who are kind of following around what we would call the Judaizers, Pharisees, whatever you want to call them. For the most part, they are there and trying to argue from what they think is the correct point of view, not necessarily just blatantly outright saying, these guys are, whatever it happens to be. We do get, maybe in some senses with some of the Gentile non-believers who were discrediting them, maybe some slight lies. But again, I don't think it was just a policy of misinformation. I think it was more of a just a disagreement, an argument that was going on, and. I would say, in trying to be as kind as possible, they were they were referencing back to what they believed, more so than just coming outright and saying terrible things about Paul and the other apostles, in that regard. But again, they were wrong. So anyway, so best answer I can give on that. The next one is is a good question. It comes from First Samuel 15. How does the Lord have regrets? There actually is a callback to back in Genesis 6, when we get word that that the Lord was regretting the fact that He'd created humanity based on how sinful it had gotten. And the word that is being used here in First Samuel 15. Is regretting, having made Saul the king. Um, but I would say a couple things. First of all, the regret that's here, we should never try to attribute our English word understanding of that word to God. First of all, Saul's sin didn't catch God off guard at all. Saul's rebellion was he knew that this was what Saul was going to do. Um, but he's God, therefore, is quite capable of lamenting a state of affairs that he's foreknown and that he's brought about. I mean, that he's just, I don't know how to describe it, but it's not the regret that you or I would feel like the regret of, there are moments. I'll be honest, as a father, I look back and I'm like, did I spend enough time with my children when they were growing up? Is there some regret here or there? Should I have done X, Y, Z? So I wouldn't want to attribute that type of regret to God in that sense. But it is obviously God is a being. He has emotions, again, not like what you and I have, but he can look back and he can say, "Look, I'm grieved that he has sinned, and it's time to find another king." While still maintaining, I've never changed my mind. I mean, he had it in mind. We're going to have Saul for this long, and then we're going to move to David. For reasons I can only say, that's God. Uh, that's for him to know and for us to eventually one day find out the why. I don't know. I can't answer that. And by the way, I think I've told you many times before, the most profound answer I learned in seminary was exactly that. I don't know. But I have faith and I trust that God, was not regretting in the way that you and I would understand it, but could have that emotion of, the realization, I've put this in place, and it's hard. Is the best way I can try to explain it. Um, Next question, again, continuing on Saul. Twice God sends a harmful spirit to Saul. Why? And question continues, God already took his spirit away from Saul, and is Saul being punished more than that? I can't think of anything worse than taking God's taking his spirit away from a person. Um, well, Yeah, again, y'all are asking hard questions. I really wish John was doing it this week. But no, yeah, God did remove it, and God did send this harmful spirit on Saul. I think we can but notice, however, that it was a temporary spirit. It wasn't there all the time. It was just there as long as God allowed it. This is very important for us to realize for ourselves, and of course, we see it in the book of we'll see it in the book of Job when we get there. I think in December. Satan and his minions, they're only allowed to do what God allows them to do. And does God use these things for his glory and our benefit? Absolutely. Why does he do them? Why does he allow these things to happen? I can't tell you. I know in this case that the evil spirit to start with was sent to Saul so that David would have the opportunity to get in to the inner circle there. I mean, David's playing his harp and soothing Saul. So God can use these types of things to bring about good things. And so you know, the best I can tell you is that uh, God does allow evil spirits to torment people. Especially Saul, he uses them in people's lives. I would say that I've seen people who and when I say evil spirits, please, I don't want to get into the the exorcist type thing. I don't want to go that far. That is not what I'm talking about with the evil spirit. But I'm thinking, that there's people that I know that the Lord has chased by just having them go through really really hard times, what they would even see as spiritual warfare, to recapture their hearts, people who've been running away from God. um so again, God does it, and He does it for His glory and for our good, as we learn about in Romans 8:28. But again, the power of the evil spirit is only as far and or as much as God will allow that to happen. But He does it for His glory. Yeah. Next question. The relationship between Jonathan and David is beautiful. I wonder if Sunday's sermon is going to talk about it, talk about their example of friendship. Yes, we are. In fact, that is the entirety of the theme of the lesson, and not just the friendship of David and Jonathan, but how that friendship correlates or relates to the friendship that Jesus has with us. I mean, one of the neat things in Scripture, and we'll look at this a little bit further on Sunday, is that Jesus says to us, he says, I no longer call you servants. You're not. You're my friends. And that's one of I mean, just the concept that is even possible, that we can be friends with the living God, is incredible. So yeah, we're going to explore that a lot. So I won't say too much in this right here, but yes, we are going to talk about it, and it is a beautiful picture. And I hope, I'm actually, just as a little preview, I'm going to be talking about three individuals from my life who are friends, and I hope I can get through it without crying at certain points. But we are definitely going to be looking at that. Then the final question or final statement was the verses where it talks about David acting insane. I think that was in today's reading. Letting spit drip down his face and doing weird things to a door is hilarious. No relate, and that even says no related question, but I can imagine the scenes and it makes me laugh every time. Yeah, that's one of the wonderful things about Scripture. There are times, if you really read it and read it closely, there are times when the Bible is just outright hysterical. We it's always fun to teach in the book of Judges, and you teach about the story of Ehud and killing King Agon, and one of the better lines in Scripture, and the dung came out. I mean, just all of these different things that are really funny when you kind of look at it, and this is one of those. There is a little bit of a spiritual connection here, and I know there's not a question, but I just thought I'd address real quick. I think this is a wonderful example of God's sovereignty and human responsibility. I mean, uh, David is fleeing from Saul, and so he's actually gone into enemy territory, but he's gone into like the enemy territory where like Goliath, who he'd killed just a couple years earlier, was a Philistine, and so now he's in Philistine land, and they know who he is, and so they bring him before the king, and it doesn't like it doesn't read as though they brought him before the king in order to execute him or anything like that. It doesn't read like that, but that's the best sense I could get. And so he does this, and I'm sure that it is a thing where he kind of acts a little crazy and knowing, hey, how can I help myself get out of this? But it's in God's sovereignty. We know this because of the psalm that David writes about this that we read today, where he says, "You delivered me from this guy." And so even though it's David doing the quote unquote acting, it's God's sovereignty in the midst of all of that, working everything out. And I think this is just a beautiful picture. Again, we can claim too much on sovereignty part. We can say, "Oh, well, God is sovereign, so therefore I can just sit back, relax, and do nothing." Or we can go the opposite direction and say, "Look, I don't know anything about if God's going to do anything, so I better do all the work." But I think that both are actually true. That yes, there is God and He is sovereign, and we have a responsibility in terms that we would more understand, act out our salvation, work out our salvation with fear and trembling. Not the fear and trembling that David was doing in this instance, though. But again, it is just one of those neat passages that is funny, but it also has a great message in it. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I look forward to seeing you on Friday. We'll talk to you later. Bye.